The lowest quarterly sales gain in the company's history. What are the indications for the growth prospects of this company going forward?
So I actually think they're pretty good. I was listening very hard and looking very hard at the numbers reported this quarter, and there are definitely some green shoots. So if you look at what Zoom is going through, they had a huge pull forward in demand during the pandemic, and this led to a really ballooning of revenue in the online segment, or the consumer segment, as I like to refer to it. And they're now pivoting back to their roots in selling Zoom to enterprises. And that actually is going fairly well, but it's a transition year that we're in this year. And so, as disappointing as the results were this quarter from a growth standpoint, I think some of the vital signs for a return to better momentum next year were there in the quarter this year.
Yeah, that transition as offices start to reopen. But what does this mean for competition with the likes of Microsoft Teams as well?
So they're definitely hitting stiffer competition from Microsoft Teams, particularly as they make that move into enterprise. I mean, one thing that Microsoft can do and is doing is they are including Teams in some of their larger Microsoft Office 360 sales. So that's a headwind that Zoom has to contend with. The one thing I would say is definitely in their favor is during the pandemic, everyone stayed connected using Zoom. So the decision makers are aware of this and probably used it themselves during the pandemic. Zoom is very user-friendly, so there's really an element of low friction there that I think they can lean on when they're up against Microsoft in some of these sales, in sales bake-offs, excuse me.
John, what are we seeing the distinction between enterprise and consumer at the moment? And is there anything Zoom can do to target that growth?
So, Zoom definitely has the sales force focused on expanding an enterprise, which this past quarter was about 54% of total sales. That's up from 52% last quarter. So they're making headway, but it will take time. I think in the consumer segment, the resistance they had was converting freemium accounts to paid accounts. So they're really having a hard time generating new users, but they're doing a good job of limiting churn of existing customers. And so they weren't specific about what they're doing there, but it's definitely an area of focus for them in terms of coming up with initiatives that are going to overcome any friction there in converting freemium to paid accounts in the consumer segment.